Welcome to the Unity Guides Interviews with Experts series. My name is Clayton Stenson. I'll be your host today. The series is brought to you by the Unity Guide, where we help develop Unity with companies running on the entrepreneurial operating system. We do this through fractional integrator services and coaching for the visionary and or integrator. And recently, I've been meeting so many amazing people, and I thought there has to be a way that I can take a piece of these conversations that I have week in and week out and share them with the business community to add value. And one of those amazing people that I know is Tonia Butterworth. Tonia is a SystemSoul coach in the Michigan market. We met through the Christ-centered Second in Command network that I launched back in January. And she used to be an EOS integrator and recently transitioned into the role of coaching companies implementing the operating system, SystemSoul. The topic she's passionate about today, we're going to discuss is the quarterly all-team meeting or state of the company meeting for those running on EOS. So welcome, Tonia. Thanks for joining us today. But before we get into discussing the topic that we're going to today, I just want to learn a little bit about you and about SystemSoul. A lot of people watching may not have heard of SystemSoul. So can you tell us a little bit what is SystemSoul in your own words, just in case someone wants to learn more about it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the only business framework that's built on humanity. It's the simplest way to put it.
Awesome.
So,
awesome.
yes.
Cool. Well, I look forward to learning a little more about that. So how did you discover SystemSoul? What led you to transitioning from being an integrator to a coach?
All of the groups and networks that I've been a part of, I think it was, if I were to trace it back, I think it's just, that's how things work sometimes. You met somebody who introduced you to somebody who introduced you to somebody.
Yeah.
And the soul part of it really spoke to me more than anything.
Yeah.
And it really, is centered all around people and the soul of your business.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I'm just curious, like transitioning from being an integrator to a coach, is that a challenging thing to do for you, or do you feel like you've always kind of had that bent already?
I think I did. I mean, if I look back at our journey, we did a self-implementation initially, and then, worked with an implementer after that. And so I think when you're in that position, you're familiar with the tools in the system, and I feel like I bring kind of a different perspective being that second in command as well when I'm working with companies, seeing both the visionary and the integrator side of it, and then also the impact on the team.
Yeah. And I think you said you did base camp too, right? So you have a bit of training.
Yes.
That's cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's shift gears and get into the topic that you're passionate about. So you call it, I think in SystemSoul, it's quarterly all team meeting. Is that right? In
Yeah.
It's called the state of the company meeting. So tell me a little bit, why are you passionate about this meeting?
I'm passionate about it because it ties into employee engagement, and it's the communication piece. People really want to see themselves in the company, and they really want to know what's going on. I hear of companies quite often, more often than I would like to hear, they're not doing an all-team meeting, even on an annual basis. It's just something that's forgotten. They feel like through maybe weekly meetings, things are covered and people know where the company is going, or they should know, but they really don't know. And when you're not doing that, they can form their own, story in their mind, and that can kind of get you into a bad place. And it really reminds me of one question in particular it's one of the 12 questions on the Gallup survey. And that is, it's the mission or purpose of the company makes me feel my job is important. If you don't know what the mission of the company is, what the vision is, what the direction is, how can you feel important in your job? And if you don't know the mission of your job itself, we use commander's intent in that for every position. Every position has a mission. If you don't know what that is, how can you connect with that? And I think people really want to connect their purpose with what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. That's good. That's good. I think it's becoming more and more common that people want that, right? Like I think it used to be you just get a job, you work for 40 years, you retire, and people were maybe more okay with that. I would say in today's day and age, people aren't. They want to be tied into something that matters and contribute to something greater than themselves. So that's good. Um, and it's interesting. Like I remember when I was first self-implementing EOS, we didn't do quarterly meetings at first, but one of the things I've noticed is that the leadership team is very clear, right, on where they're going. And I think sometimes you can fall into that trap of just assuming that everyone knows because right?
Yes.
But the further you get away from the leadership team, the less clear everything is, right? So having something like a quarterly all team meeting or state of the company is really important to do that. So just to tie people in and keep them engaged. So what what does it look like? Like if you do one of these meetings, what's the content? What's the agenda?
Yeah. Before we go on to that, one thing
Yeah.
that I wanted to, I think a lot of people know there's been, it's been published out there. The workforce only uh, less than a third of the workforce is actually engaged. I think that was based on 2022, the Gallup survey.
Yep.
And so that's why I think this is just one small piece. As a leader, it's a gift that you can give to your team. Have a 2-hour meeting, and that's one of the gifts that you can give as a leader.
Okay, it's 2 hours. The SystemSoul recommends 2 hours.
1 to 2 hours.
Yeah, yeah.
In my previous position, we did 2 hours.
Okay,
We try to bring the team together if we could, and do a little team building around it as well.
right.
Being a remote team, we would do that every quarter, bring people together.
Yeah, we used to make an afternoon of it. We did it in my first company that I was an integrator in. We would just bring in a meal, have some fun and joke around and do the meeting as well. So it was, really a community building thing as well. So that's good.
Yes, if you feed them, they will come.
True. That's true. That's
Yeah,
awesome. Awesome.
yeah.
That's good.
So what the agenda should look like, it's really quite simple. It's three things, and there's, I guess, bullets under those three things, but it's
Yeah.
where we've been, where we're going, or where we are now, and where we're going.
Yeah.
And under each one of those is kind of tools that you can pull out of the toolbox. Where we've been, it's celebrating accomplishments and wins that have happened in the last quarter. This is a great time to pull up the scoreboard or the scorecard.
Yeah.
And, if you can do an overall percent, that's great. But where you're winning. And I mean, the team should always have access to that.
Yeah.
And financial performance, it's always good to have that transparency and the objectives that were accomplished at, at any level, leadership all the way down. So the objectives or rocks, I guess, that were completed in the last quarter. And then
you're comparing to, what the goals were also, right? And yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It's all the celebrations, all the wins, that kind of happen.
Yeah.
Where we are today, is birthdays and anniversaries and new hires, awards, recognition, anything that happened within that last quarter, core value shout outs. It's always good to bring that core value piece into it.
Yeah.
Responding to employee engagement surveys. So we've done them on a quarterly basis before. I always recommend that. It's good for leadership to have a pulse on that. Based on that feedback, and hopefully it's confidential. It should always be confidential, anonymous. Leadership should, respond to that and maybe talk about what's being done, based on that feedback.
Right.
And then any themes, I think, that have kind of been discussed, opportunities that were identified. That's where we are here today,
Yep. Yeah. That's good. It's good.
Yeah.
You mentioned financials and being transparent. How, because I know this is an issue, how transparent do you be? Like how would you address that if someone asked, like, I'm not comfortable being 100% transparent, like where do I draw the line?
No, I definitely respect that.
Yeah,
I think if it's a top line revenue goal, maybe at the minimum, or are you on target? It's yes or no.
right.
We're on target for our revenue, or we fell, a little bit short of our revenue, and here's our plan, to make up for that. It could be the same for, margin. It's typically top line and margin.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things I had another interview recently, and we were talking about the kind of the dangers of just sharing the top line,
Yeah.
because if your revenue is 10 million, and like for some reason people just think, wow, like you're a millionaire, right? $10 million, right? But they don't recognize sometimes that that maybe only half a million of that is profit or whatever, right? Or maybe even
Yeah.
less, right? So that's kind of a tough one to navigate, because you don't want to be too transparent, but at the same time there's ditches, I guess, that you can get kind of stuck in if you're too transparent or not transparent enough. So it's
Yeah.
good
I
to
think I mean, I've seen companies where they're kind of open book, but they actually spend some time, the CFO actually spends some time in breaking that down. Not everyone thinks in that way.
yeah,
So you are right. You can get into a danger zone. And I think if nothing else, it's a yes or no. Did we meet our revenue or our sales target, our sales
yeah,
goal?
yeah,
You know, some organizations do a bonus for the entire team,
yeah,
a flat dollar amount every quarter if their sales goal was met.
right,
The sales team knows what that dollar amount is, or the VP of sales knows, but
yeah,
the rest of the team doesn't. So
yeah,
whatever works for you, I think.
yeah, yeah. But people do need to have goals. They need to have something that they're striving towards, and that they're measuring success against. So I think it's important to have something,
Yeah,
for sure. And then the
I think so
last
too.
element is where we're going. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yes. So this is that clarity and direction piece of it. And this is when you're going to pull in more of those tools. So this is, it's the things that are on the BTO or on your roadmap that is your 10-year, your 3-year, your 1 year, and then your quarterly objectives or rocks. That's where you're going.
Awesome.
So it's a review of those things along with the new objectives or rocks for that quarter.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I've heard it said that you have to share your vision. I think it's like at least 7 times before people
Yeah.
really get it. And I think, sometimes it can feel redundant. It's like, oh, I'm going to share this again. Like I do this every quarter. Right. But I think people, they need to hear it. Right. It's the same thing with marketing. They say you need to see an ad for something 7 times before you actually engage with it. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's important to bring it back and center the organization on it.
I think so too. I think that if if the leadership team has really taken the time, working through that BTO, working through that roadmap, everything in there should be inspiring to the employees in the organization. And another tool that you can pull in is, that I do recommend is the org chart or the accountability chart. In that section, especially if you're changing positions, hiring new positions, there's open seats, things like that. And each individual person should have, clarity on their role. But it gives them insight to see a growth path for themselves and, maybe places where they can, if they see an open seat, maybe there's an opportunity for them to advance into that. And it's really opening up all of those things rather than the leadership team holding on to them, and each individual person has to ask the questions
Right.
or again telling themselves a story. The leadership team, they went for a whole day offsite this last quarter and we haven't heard anything. I wonder what they're talking about.
Right. Right.
Something's happening, things feel weird, they just can get into that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. If you leave the gap, then they fill it in with whatever
Yes.
creative, and it seems like as humans we don't often fill those gaps positively. Like it just we
No.
just by default fill them in with negative things or assumptions or all that kind of thing, and it's not healthy. So we don't want to leave room for that. That's good. So in the past, how have you seen these all company meetings improve employee engagement?
Doing the quarterly engagement, employee engagement survey after the fact,
Yeah.
after this meeting has happened, I did see, multiple quarters where, in this one, it pulled in some of the Gallup, but also some other elements of, rating leadership and, all of those, understanding your role, kind of digging deeper into those things.
Yeah.
I did see an improvement. Actually, with one team in particular where we won a Best and Brightest award after being very consistent, with these things.
Yeah.
I think it's a piece of it. I think it's keeping in mind that people, they want to see themselves in it, and if you can, they will be invested in that if you can help them to see themselves in that.
Yeah.
So the things that are on your BTO and on your roadmap, that's a lot of that's internal. It's not your outside messaging to potential clients. It's not your marketing strategy. It's not your sales strategy.
Hmm.
It is really getting them inspired around why the company exists, and
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, getting excited about that.
Yeah. That's good. I found that the first company I was integrator in, we had 20 staff. And at first, when I first started there, I wasn't the integrator, but it was we had about 18 people, I think. And, but it was a tight group. Like we had one big project. A lot of people were working on that project, or at least some of the time they were working on that project. So we all knew each other quite well. But as the company changed and grew and we started doing less, it was a construction company. So we did less, where we were self-performing the work. We were using subs, and we were managing more different projects. And what we noticed was that people were starting to not see each other very often. Like the people in the office, and there was, I think, 6 of us in the office, we saw each other a lot. So we were connecting and building relationships. But what we found was that the others weren't, right? Like there were 6 site supervisors. They never see each other because they were all at different jobs, right? So one of the nice things about the quarterly and having a social part of it, was that was like the one of the few times that we would all be together, right? And we would,
Yes.
I wouldn't call it a family necessarily, but like it felt like that, right? We
Yeah.
right, like our visionary was really funny, right? So we would all get together, and there'd be so much laughter. And I think if somebody walked in, they'd be like, "What's going on up there?" Like why are they laughing so much? It was just because we had fun, right? And bringing it back to the soul part, I think that's important too, right? Yeah, you need to cast a vision, you need to do all of these things, but ultimately it's about your people, right? It's about they're the
Yeah.
center, right? So how do we,
Yeah.
and you and I have had talks about this a lot, right? How do we create an environment where people can thrive, where people they want to be there, they have a path to success, whatever that looks like for them, and how do we tie the vision into what we want to accomplish as a company? How do we tie that into what they want to accomplish as a person, right? Like they don't have to be at odds with each other, they can be in alignment with each other. And I think that's beautiful, when you
It
can accomplish
is.
that, and everybody gets what they need, and what they want from it.
I I think it's making people feel connected to each
Mhm.
other, to the company. Um, it's all the human part of it. Like you said, laughing, and we put a lot of fun in our slide decks as well.
Yeah.
We were, that super corporate. And so when we would get to some of the celebrations, we had 5 people in one quarter that got engaged. It was like the thing that was happening one. And so, we had to put some gifts in there and all of that. And then, you
Yeah.
know, our culture committee was planning some bridal showers. And I think it does, it ties the company together with each individual that's there, and they feel like someone at work cares for them and they belong
Yeah.
someplace. And
That's funny.
um, I liked what you said too about, in that company, when you started kind of working separately, a lot of times when you're working in silos, and I think especially when you've been a part of that, like, you know, cohesive team and now you're kind of split off into silos, how do you know what the other teams are working on and what they're celebrating?
Yeah.
Was there a project that they finished that you could highlight in that where
Yeah.
we've been?
Yeah.
You know, it's just a place to celebrate all of those things.
Yeah. Yeah. We would do that too. Like, and that brings me to another question. Who speaks at it?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm glad you asked it.
Yeah.
The visionary does the first two parts. So this is, I've checked this as far as the rules.
Yeah.
Um, and the integrator does the where we're going,
Okay.
which is interesting to think about
Yeah. Yeah.
when
That
you
is
think about
interesting.
that. And the way that it's been explained to me before is if questions come up about the how, the integrator is the one that gets to work with the team on the how, not the what. So the what has been established.
Right. That's interesting. And is there room for questions?
Yes. I mean, definitely leave room throughout, you know, at the end of each section or at the very end, to answer any questions.
Yeah.
They may come up, in, you know, depending on what industry you're in, from one quarter to the next, things can change very quickly.
Very quick. Yeah.
Yes, and
One of my
so
clients, it was the week after our quarterly meeting and everything changed. A key person decided to leave the team and it was like, oh, okay, let's review our rocks and decide if this is going to stay the same or if we need to adjust. All right. So
yeah.
yeah, things can change really quickly. That's good. So there's room for questions. Um, that's awesome. Anything else that you'd like to add about the annual company meeting or quarterly conversations, as we call it in US, or quarterly state of company, as we call it?
If you're not, yeah, I mean, if you're not doing them, do them consistently. Carve out the time. It's a gift that you can give to your team.
Yeah, it's really important because I can't stress it enough. Like they'll fill in the gaps.
They
They'll
will.
fill in the gaps. If you're having problems with culture, you're having problems with bad attitudes or negativity, they're probably just filling in the gaps, right? They want to know what's going on. If you're getting lots of questions, but you're not sure if about the spirit and the attitude of the questions, well, it's because you're leaving it up to their imagination, right? And they need to be informed. I think at the minimum quarterly. I think there should be other ways as well that you're updating people along the way. Like L10s are great, or what do you call them in System and Soul?
Weekly, weekly
Yeah.
sync.
Yeah, weekly sync. Like that stuff's important, but not everybody's in it. Right. So I think
Right.
even like one of the companies I'm working with now is 60 employees. They have a little huddle, with the frontline employees every week. And it's less time, right? But there's providing them updates about what's going on. Like if somebody leaves, like I just said, right? Like if somebody leaves and people hear about it secondhand, again, they're going to fill in the gaps, right? Like you need to be proactive in your communication and make sure that they're understanding it in the right ways, and also giving them room for our questions. I think is a great addition as well. So
Yeah.
thank you, Tonia. It's been great. And if someone wanted to learn more about System and Soul, how would they get in touch with you?
So there's two ways. They can go to systemandsoul.com,
Yeah,
and you know the coaches are there. There's more all the information, or they can find me at either Tonia Butterworth, you know, on LinkedIn, or at iuleadership.com.
awesome. iuleadership.com. Excellent.
Yeah.
On behalf of our viewers, I'd like to say thank you for joining us today, Tonia. It's been great getting to know you over the last, I guess it's been not even a year, but I feel like I've known you longer than that.
I do
And
too.
thank you for your passion on this topic, and I'm sure it's going to be impactful for people
Oh,
on their journey of building a business. So thank you. And
I'm honored to be here. So thank you for having me.
awesome. So if today's interview added value to you, please subscribe to this channel for future interviews with other business coaches and experts in the world of business.